Hit Thor.
When I said I put a circle of protection on the world and the United States against Kim Jong-un's nuclear threat about a year ago, and I seen this video and I was like, well, this is interesting.
Every time I drank, I did not always do activities that were satanic, but anytime I had been doing anything that was satanic, I had been drinking.
I think we can all relate to that. This is Radio Free Innsmouth. This is episode,
그리고 진짜 제가 해보고 싶은 게
Jesus, 120 of these fucking things? Alright, whatever. This one's gonna be good though. I promise. Because we're gonna be talking about two of the most offensive and strange bands of all time. They're both kind of hard to file into a particular genre or something. I guess the least you could say about them is that they're both pretty industrial sounding and they're vaguely adjacent to grindcore. The first one is Catasexual Urge Motivation, which sounds very like carcassy, suffocation-y, verbose as a band name until you realize that it's abbreviated Catasexual C Urge U Motivation M C-U-M. That's right, they're named after the Latin word for with.
우리 동아리 실세는 바로
I don't know, I'm trying to keep it family friendly. But anyways, Catasexual Urge Motivation are from Japan. And they don't really sound like anybody else. They're sort of a cult favorite band. I don't know how much actual influence they had, but that's probably because their music is so weird. Despite that, you can compare them to certain aspects of three more well-known bands. First up, earlier, more grindcore-y Carcass, specifically when they would vary up their vocal styles a lot and had slightly more groove to the music than is normal for this genre. Also, their method of switching between the groovier parts and these blastier parts. Second band, Impetigo, or Impetigo, however you say it, the way they take very simple elements like this riff right here, it's almost the same for the whole song, but the way that they vary it up in texture, tempo, time signatures, and whatnot, they can make something very epic out of very simple, basic parts. So Impetigo, another influence on this band. They also do the same thing with the varying vocal styles and whatnot. Third band, Mortician, because they are ridiculously brutal and down-tuned to the point of almost parody. And they use a very obvious drum machine and don't make any bones about it. Like, they're not trying to trick anybody. That's definitely a drum machine and it actually becomes part of their style. So you take that style of shit you hear from Carcass and squeeze almost all of the humor out of it to the point where it ceases to be sort of tongue-in-cheek and actually becomes rather disturbing. You take Mortician and squeeze out most of like the cheese and like horror movie atmosphere, and you take Impetigo and again you squeeze all of the humor and lightheartedness and punk influence out of it. You put all that in a fucking blender, and then you have two crazy Japanese dudes try to reconstruct it into a cybergrind band before cybergrind even existed, and you get Catasexual Urge Motivation. This is their first demo from 1994, and it shows their sound still in its embryonic stages. You have a very obvious drum machine, of course, but quite a bit of like doom metal in the winter sense. Also a high utilization of dissonance, perhaps betraying a bit of a crust punk influence, but overall fairly unique sounding, especially for the time period. So you get these long, drawn-out, groove-laden but not fun at all doom metal riffs that cycle into this sort of blasting, nasty cyber grind. It's very industrial, not in just because it's using a drum machine. The riffs themselves actually feel very mechanical. And you have these like different vocal styles being utilized at the same time, kind of playing off of each other, leading to a band that's big on texture and atmosphere, not as big on melody and recognizable catchy shit, although they can be catchy at times. I like these little non-verbal exclamations in between the riffs. This is like the lunatic fringe of gore grind, occupying the same space as paracarditis, sarcomucosis, and lymphatic phlegm, blue holocaust, and whatnot. But as they started to move into later demos in like the middle of the 90s, the industrial sound starts coming to the forefront quite a bit more in an interesting way, very Godflesh, with these percussive robotic snares dicing up these nasty gore grind riffs in an absolutely demented fashion. This band's concept has always been serial killers mixed in with a bit of a sexual depravity and possibly a commentary on the absurdity of living in a collapsing, morally depraved modern society, and sort of reveling in the disgustingness of all that. Their doom metal portions are still in full force with this weird syncopated cycling drum beat going on under it. So quite a big fan of that very unique sounding stuff. By the time they get to their full-length album, they're basically just a very strange industrial grindcore band. Everything is constructed in a mathematically precise manner. It's not quite as slapdash as their early stuff. I almost wonder if the bass is synthetic on this too. Everything just seems completely dehumanized and nasty. But I enjoy this album quite a bit. It's a bit of fun. I actually own an original CD of it, which has a very, very censored cover that you pull the little slit place back and it's like, oh look, there's a weird you know, that's the thing. I mean, look it up yourself later. There's one of their stop-start transitions into some blasty stuff. I think I like this music just for how outsider it is. Not too much, even in like the wacky end of grindcore sounds like this. Check this part coming out up here. This is fucking nuts. Using his voice as sort of a percussive instrument, locking into the groove created by the drum machine and the surprisingly bouncy guitar. So that's Catasexual Urge Motivation. They were on Razorback Records back when that label was less about sort of like this kind of horror movie 70s giallo atmosphere and more about just putting out the most depraved stuff possible back when they would get their CDs seized by the government and shit. And this falls right in line with that philosophy of doing music. Were this band to be around today, I mean, I guess they are still around, they're just not putting out any new material, but if they were still around, they would probably court the same level of controversy as the next band we are going to cover. That, of course, being Reek of the Unzen gas fumes. Both of these bands are from Japan, and they both play this weird industrial remix of the grindcore genre. The concept for Catasexual Urge Motivation, of course, being serial murder and general depravity. The concept for Reek of the Unzen gas fumes is more focused around fascism in its most cartoonishly evil sense. Just war crimes and general like genocide and nastiness. But they contrast that with this bizarre, militaristic, like fanfare, melodic, sort of blackened grindcore sound. It's absolutely bizarre, and it seems like everybody hates this band, or at least most of like the more normal members of the metal underground do. But I, however, have heavily enjoyed everything they've done, and that new full length they put out last year was quite good. A lot of people tend to write these guys off as like stupid or being like a joke band, but their composition, the way they write their songs, is actually very intellectual and like well thought out. There are 3 dudes in this band as opposed to the 2 guys in Catasexual Urge Motivation. The guitars, bass, and drum programming are all done by some guy named Imperial Nuclear Hazard of Kichigai Rising, also known as INHKR. The vocals are supplied by 9300FGBB, Sex Robot, which I'm assuming is the name of some kind of like weapon or something. And then there's another guy just named War Crime Rapist, that's credited as noises, because these guys actually come out of like sort of like a weird avant-garde noise background, so there's utilization of samples for textural purposes. These guys tend towards the melodic and black metal end of the spectrum more than Catasexual did. You got these downright happy sounding riffs opening up the album with that bizarre fucking drum machine under it, sounding like something out of like a Dutch Gabba techno thing from the 90s. They also move into this kind of stuff, which stylistically sounds like the lunatic fringe of very punishing Norse black metal from the early 2000s, like 1349 and whatnot. It's interesting to see that pop up in the grindcore context. But it's still melodic despite being so chaotic and blasting, which is very interesting, especially when you have these disgusting fucking like grindcore vocals done through a broken microphone. That's not the first time the broken microphone trick has been used in black metal. Actually, Varg purposefully used a broken microphone back on the Philosophem album to give that one its unique vocal styling. So you probably think, okay, these guys went from that melodic thing into the more chaotic black metal stuff. They're doing a nihilistic concept like Catasexual Urge Motivation was. But while both bands were covering this week revel in depravity, Reek of the Unzen Gas Fumes actually has quite a bit of romanticism to their sound that wouldn't let them just collapse a track like that into chaos. They have to follow sort of a heroic journey. So you remember that melodic part at the beginning? Well, they're going to have to make a counterpoint to that part after the black metal section. Like that. Look at that! Nice little contrapuntal riff sort of communicating to that melodic one from earlier in the song across the morass of black metal interlude. Utilizing a lot of black metal takes like bar chords and whatnot. But then we get into this very nasty sort of chuggier riff. Where exactly have I heard this kind of stuff before, I wonder? Why, yes, they're taking influence from the brutal death metal scene, which I'm completely okay with because I love that shit. Get the water, nigga! But you also notice that despite being very primitive and chuggy, these riffs actually slot in perfectly with that melody from earlier. It's just been deconstructed into a more death metal-y and nasty form. God, these vocals are horrendous in the most wonderful way possible. Here's where we get the noises from Mr. Warcrime Rafe, these sort of snippets of World War II era radio chatter, I'm guessing. Which gives everything just a very unsettling atmosphere. Sided similar stuff back on the Hail Horror Hail album. And now, as the music picks back up, so do the samples speed up in intensity as we head back into those melodic figures from earlier in the song. So that's what I mean when I say this is all very well put together despite being so outsider and depraved compared to what most metalheads are used to. Might also compare this to a Discordance axis a little bit. The utilization of a chug separating melodic sections, maybe even grid length. I really dig how this song ends. It's all based around that melodic figure that's been recurring throughout the song's runtime. They even did a little oopsie there. They kind of shifted it up a couple steps. Look at this. This ending is amazing. Perfect little capstone to the melody that's been running through this song. And that right there is Reek of the Unzen Gas Fumes. So with both of these guys, Catasexual Urge Motivation and Reek of the Unzen Gas Fumes, are they being offensive just for the sake of being offensive? Are they trying to say something with their art? Is this like complete like Dadaist type shit? Is it modern art, or is it like reaching back to something more primal in a world of illusions? I don't know. That's up to you guys to find out. Nobody even knows who's in Reek of the Unzen Gas Fumes. I have like suspicions, but this is another Black Magic SS situation where everything about that band is very hush-hush, and it's kind of hard to get their stuff. A lot of it's only put out on like tape or vinyl. Catasexual Urge Motivation's a little bit easier to acquire because they were on Razorback, you know, like there's still reissues of all their stuff floating around out there. So I don't know, you know, what do you think of these bands? It's up to you. Make your own decisions. I think they're pretty cool, and they have a unique take on what otherwise is occasionally a very stale genre, this sort of like wacky grindcore stuff. So highly recommended. Go and get their stuff, nerd. See ya.
That bullcrap will not last long.
The new Catasexual album. These guys are a French black. I gave this thing several listens through, all the way through. It's an hour-long album. It's a pretty long track. That's about 20 minutes. And I gotta say, this is one of the most interesting and ambitious black metal albums I've heard this year. It's creative, it's fun, it takes a ton of risks. So, of course, I had to do research on the LP. I pretty much already decided sonically that I liked it. Everything about this album is in French, so in order to translate some of the lyrics, some background on the band and the internet too. And on this record, and in the band's past releases, of course, in the lyrics, I just kind of discovered that there are hints of like racialism in here, as well as sexism and nationalism. And you know what, I've dealt with stuff like this in the past, like on the new Version album, and what I think this ultimately comes down to is just not liking the message.